I defended a disabled student and now my principal is trying to expel me. I have zero effing regrets for what I did, even though my actions came with consequences I know they were justified. I'm a 17-year-old high school student, I play football and run track and I really care about staying in shape and taking care of my body. I get along with most of my teammates, but I go to school in the South in a very conservative area, so a lot of my classmates have the same SHT beliefs as their parents. It's really normal for me to overhear people using slurs or saying hateful things in the locker room or in classrooms. It gets under my skin every time, and after I graduate, I hope to earn a sports scholarship that will take me far away from my bigoted home state. I don't fit in here and I want to live somewhere that is more tolerable and free. Anyway, I've had a couple of incidents in the past where I have gotten into verbal and physical fights with my classmates because they were being hateful a-holes. For example, one of my friends was getting bullied for having two moms by this one dickhead kid. So I found the kid and gave him two black eyes, one for both of my friends' moms. As you can see, I don't like to just brush off the bullying that goes on in my school, and I'm not afraid to stand up to any of my obnoxious classmates if I feel like they're putting others down. It's been a while since I had to stand up for someone like this, and like I said, I don't regret a damn thing. I was leaving football practice a little late one day. There weren't many kids still on school property, just a couple of sports teams and a couple of students who had been studying in the library. Anyway, I walked out of my school's back door to begin my walk home, and that's when I heard the sounds of laughter and soft crying nearby. I decided to investigate. I walked behind the school's large dumpsters to find a group of student athletes circling one single student, a girl. As I got closer, I recognized the girl as a severely autistic kid I had been in school with since kindergarten. I had never spoken with her directly, but I always saw her around school with an aide. Anyways, I was disgusted as I walked up to see the group of boys were teasing her, getting in her face and making intimate and ableist comments. Some of the boys were even laughing and recording her on their phones. I already knew I was about to hand out some whoopings, but when I watched one of the boys pull her skirt down right before I reached the group, I saw red like I never had before. It was like someone had hooked me up to a car battery. Seeing all these guys who were bigger than her harassing and touching this poor, scared girl made me angrier than I had ever been in my life. I recognized the boys in the circle as the sophomore baseball team, and the majority of them were much smaller than me, so I had no worries as I started in on them. I helped the girl fix her skirt and told her to get inside the school and find an adult. Then I began by grabbing the kid who had pulled her skirt down first. I wanted to make an example of him, so I straight up picked him up and threw him with all my strength into the dumpster. His head clanged against the dumpster as he fell in. That's when the rest of the boys started screaming and cursing at me, but I just grabbed the next one nearest to me. I pounded each of them into the pavement till my knuckles were stained with everyone's blood but mine. I know I seem like a crazy violent psycho or something, but you can't understand how infuriating it was for me to see so many guys pick on an innocent, confused girl like that. I knew they deserved every punch I delivered to their once laughing effing faces, and I didn't stop until they had all gotten a piece. In total, there were about 5 boys. 2 of them remained on the concrete near the dumpsters writhing in pain while the others ran off when I was done with them. Before I walked off, I looked back into the dumpster and spit on the kid who had ripped her skirt down. As I walked off, I knew I had gone over the line this time, and even though I didn't care, I knew the chance of me getting in trouble was high. Yet I could have never known just how risky and complicated things were about to get for me. I defended a disabled student and now my principal is trying to expel me. In my first post, I explained that I had beat the poop out of a bunch of boys that I had found sexually harassing a severely autistic girl after school one day. I had gone really far and seriously injured every single one of the 5 boys, and the day after my knuckles were super sore. I had gotten in trouble in the past for getting physical with the bullies at my school, but I knew this time I had crossed a line. Even though I didn't regret hurting those heads, I was anxious the days after, since I knew they would eventually tell on me and I might get badly punished. It turns out my anxieties were right, and about 2 days after I handed out the beatings I was called down to the principal's office. Before he even started speaking, the principal looked pissed off at me. For context, my principal already hated me before all this because he saw me as a troublemaker, since I had a habit of putting my hands on kids who were hateful to others. I would often stand up for the kids who were openly gay at my school or kids who were fat, and my principal would tell me each time that standing up for these losers wasn't going to get me nowhere, and eventually I needed to give up and join the herd. As I mentioned in my first post, this kind of SHT discriminatory behavior is common where I live, and I can't wait till I move out of my crappy, bigoted town. So basically, even before this incident, my principal had it out for me. Anyway, that day in the office he sat me down and explained that some of the boys I had beat up needed to get multiple stitches, and the one I had thrown in the dumpster ended up breaking his collarbone. He said that this was the last incident of violence on my record that he would tolerate, and that today would be my last day at school since I was being expelled. I tried to explain to him what I had found them doing, but all he said was that boys will be boys and that the school had a zero-tolerance policy against violence. I stood up from my chair and asked him why he was tolerating their violence towards her, but not mine towards them. He just told me to stop talking back, and said that his decision was final and he was happy to be done with my antics once and for all. I admit I knew I would get in trouble, but I never thought I'd get straight up kicked out of school. I love playing sports and I want a good future for myself. I just walked out of the principal's office and went right home because I was so upset. When I got home, I went straight to my mom's home office and cried in her arms like a little kid. I have a strong relationship with both my parents. They couldn't have kids of their own and they adopted me as their only child. They have always protected me and supported me, so it doesn't surprise me that they handled this situation in the way that they did. My mom was completely silent as I explained to her everything that happened. I could tell she was angry. She was always silent when she was really angry. When I was done venting to her, she said she wished I hadn't found myself in that situation, but she was proud of me for standing up for the girl even though she wants me to stop fighting. She helped me to bed and made me my favorite food, and when my dad got home I could hear them downstairs talking about the situation. My dad is a lawyer and my mom worked as a private investigator for 15 years, so neither of them is very good at letting things go. The next morning, my mom said we were all going to the school together to speak with my principal. My dad had his laptop and my mom had her briefcase with her, but they didn't explain anything to me before we left. I figured they had a plan of their own, but I would have never anticipated how precisely they were about to hand my principal's A to him. I defended a disabled student and now my principal is trying to expel me. When we got into the meeting, my principal looked annoyed and kept looking at his watch as my parents started ripping into him for threatening to expel me. He only really started paying attention when my dad told him that he was going to let me back into school or he would sue his balls off. I have never heard my dad talk like that. He sounded like someone off Succession and it was hard not to laugh after hearing that come out of my father's mouth. Anyway, my dad laid his laptop down in front of my principal and opened it up while explaining to him that one of the students that I had beaten up had posted a video from the day of the incident. My dad pulled up the student's social media page and clicked on the video. It showed everything. You can see and hear all the boys saying awful, disgusting things to her, and the moment her skirt is pulled down is seen as clear as day on the video. I could literally see the principal's forehead fill up with sweat as my dad explained that this evidence clearly shows that the bullies were the first to break the school's zero-tolerance violence policy. He said that if my principal expelled me then he would sue the principal and the school, and that's not all. That's when my mom stepped in and clicked open her briefcase to drop a stack of papers right in front of my principal. She crossed her arms and sternly told him that if he refused to cancel my expulsion, then she would go to the local news with the video of the harassment, and that she had done a little research of her own into my principal's past. In a few words, my mom revealed that she had found articles about my principal's past scandals when it came to embezzling money from the school. She put two hands on the desk and leaned in to tell my principal that she knew he was already on thin ice and if this story hit the news he was done for. I just sat there. My parents were like two hungry lions ripping at the poor carcass that was my principal. After both my parents finished speaking, my principal started mumbling out apologies and excuses and finally said he would rescind my expulsion, and I could go to my classes, as usual, that day. My parents nodded at each other and my dad patted me on the back. My principal did not make eye contact with any of us as we walked out, and I left his office with a big fat smile on my face. I knew my parents loved me, but I never understood the lengths they would go to protect me until that day. Their actions only made me feel more reassured that my beatdowns were justified, but after this, I know I need to be on my best behavior. Even though it was cool to see my parents eat up my principal like that, I don't want to put them in a stressful situation like that again anytime soon. Despite that, I tracked down the disabled girl just to check on her and make sure she was okay. I told her that if anyone ever bothered her like that again, to find me and let me take care of them. She gave me a goofy giggle, but I know that she knew I was serious. I would have beat up 10 more guys for her, and I'm gonna keep defending my classmates from bullies until the day I leave this SHT town.